The West believes the Kremlin is breaking apart, a historic power struggle, pitting Putin's political managers against the iron fist of the FSB. Internet blackouts, political purges, public dissent, all are seen as cracks in the foundation of the regime. But what if this isn't a fracture? What if it's a forging? This isn't a story of collapse, it's the story of a calculated stress test, a brutal audition for Russia's future, orchestrated by one man. Every conflict, every purge, is a trial by fire, designed to burn away weakness and forge a new kind of state one engineered for permanent conflict. A quiet argument over 150 war veterans in parliament wasn't just a political squabble, it was the first test in the crucible. So, what is Putin truly building in the shadows of this chaos? And why should its success alarm us far more than its failure? We are witnessing what could be the most significant misdiagnosis of the Russian state in a generation. The narrative is compelling. Under the immense pressure of a prolonged war and suffocating sanctions, the elite factions in Moscow are turning on each other. On one side, Sergey Kiriyenko's technocrats, the political engineers who believe the system can be managed with surgical precision, controlled media, and the illusion of choice. On the other, the FSB's security apparatus, the inheritors of the KGB's brutal legacy, who believe that only fear, control, and an iron fist can guarantee the state's survival. The evidence of their conflict is undeniable. It spills out in public statements, in digital warfare that cripples Russian cities, and in backroom battles that decide the fate of ministers. The logical conclusion, from a Western perspective, is that the system is eating itself alive, that Putin, the longtime arbiter, is losing his grip, reduced to a referee in a fight he can no longer control. But this conclusion assumes that stability is Putin's primary goal. It assumes that this infighting is a bug in the system. We will argue today that it is a feature. We are not watching a system break down, we are watching it being deliberately broken, melted down, and reforged into something harder, leaner, and far more dangerous. Putin is not the referee, he is the architect of the crucible. He has placed two competing models for Russia's survival into the fire, not to see which one wins, but to see what new hybrid alloy emerges from the heat. This isn't a sign of decay, it's a metamorphosis into a permanent war state. To understand this process, we must first understand the two prototypes Putin is testing. The first is Sergey Kiriyenko's efficiency model. Kiriyenko is not an ideologue, he is a political technologist of the highest order. His philosophy is one of managed reality. In his world, you don't need to crush dissent if you can co-opt it. You create fake opposition parties to channel anger harmlessly. You fund Telegram channels to shape the narrative from within. You allow young people, their VPNs and social media, so long as the influencers they follow are on the Kremlin's payroll. His model is built on a crucial assumption that a modern war requires a functioning, semi-modern economy. You need IT specialists, engineers, and a banking sector that isn't completely cut off from the world. Therefore, you must maintain an illusion of normalcy. You manage society. You don't imprison it. The goal is sustainability for a long war, fueled by a stable, if controlled, economic engine. It is a model of subtle, pervasive control. The second prototype is the FSB's purity model. This model is the antithesis of subtlety. It is the direct descendant of the Soviet state security doctrine. For the FSB, Kiriyenko's managed reality is a dangerous fantasy. They see VPNs, social media, and any connection to the outside world not as tools to be manipulated, but as vectors of ideological infection. Their solution is amputation. Cut off the internet, close the borders, label anyone with an independent thought a foreign agent. Their model dismisses economic costs as a secondary concern. For them, the survival of the state is the only metric that matters. If the economy must be sacrificed to ensure absolute ideological control and security, then so be it. They believe Russia can only survive a generational conflict with the West by becoming a fortress, isolate, disciplined, and purged of all foreign influence. It is a model of brutal, absolute control. Putin has not chosen between these two. Instead, he has set them against each other in a series of controlled experiments, designed to test the limits of the Russian system. The first, and perhaps most revealing, of these experiments took place not on the battlefield, but in a debate over the composition of the Duma. The issue was a quota of 150 seats reserved for veterans of the war in Ukraine. On the surface, a patriotic initiative. In reality, it was a laboratory for a post-Prigozhin world. The Wagner mutiny was not just a military threat, it was an existential one. It proved that the most dangerous force to the Kremlin was not a liberal protester in Moscow, but an armed, charismatic commander with battlefield credibility and the loyalty of his men. The 150 veterans were, in essence, 150 potential Prigozhins. The central question for Putin became, which system can neutralize this threat? Kiriyenko, representing the efficiency model, proposed a list of safe veterans, bureaucrats, and political appointees who had brief tours at the front. They were controllable assets. The new defense minister, Andrei Belousov, representing the state's raw power, furiously rejected this. He demanded real soldiers, men who had actually fought. It was Kiriyenko's response that laid bare the core dilemma. He stated, "Veterans are dangerous in parliament. They could get out of control, like Prigozhin." This wasn't just an expression of fear. It was an admission to Putin that his model of soft control has a hard limit. It cannot manage the raw, unpredictable element of men who have experienced the brutality of the front line. From an operational warfare perspective, these men are a double-edged sword. Their combat experience and loyalty to their units make them a potent political force. But that same loyalty is not automatically transferable to the state. They are a tribe unto themselves. Putin now has the data. The technocratic approach is inadequate for managing the human fallout of the war he created. With the limits of the efficiency model exposed, Putin allowed the purity model to run its own stress test. This test was not political, but infrastructural. It began on the morning of May 5th, when the digital nervous system of Russia's largest cities was deliberately severed. Mobile internet in Moscow and St. Petersburg collapsed. It wasn't just social media. Government portals, banking apps, taxi services, logistics networks, the entire backbone of the modern Russian economy ground to a halt. The official narrative was security, a defense against Ukrainian drones, but the geography of the blackouts told a different story. The internet was restricted in over 40 regions, from Kaliningrad in the west to remote Sakhalin in the far east, an island thousands of kilometers from the front, far beyond the range of any drone. This was not a defensive measure, it was a live-fire exercise. The FSB was given the green light to test the system's breaking point. How much economic damage can the country sustain in a single day? 4.5 billion rubles, it turns out. How long does it take for critical supply chains to falter? How does society react when its digital life support is unplugged? The Ministry of Digital Development was forced to publicly admit it needed permission from the security services to restore its own country's internet. The message was clear. The FSB demonstrated that it has the power to plunge Russia back into a pre-digital age at will. More importantly for Putin, he now possesses a complete data set on the economic and social consequences of enacting a full digital isolation. He knows exactly what it will cost to build a Russian Great Firewall, not as a theory, but as a practical reality. He tested the foundations of Fortress Russia and found them brittle, but not broken. The next stress test targeted the human element, specifically Russia's most valuable economic asset, its skilled workforce. Since 2022, hundreds of thousands of Russia's brightest minds, software developers, engineers, academics, have fled the country. Kiriyenko and the economic bloc view this as a catastrophic brain drain, a technological setback of decades. Their argument to Putin is simple. A modern army and a modern economy cannot run without brains. If you implement the FSB's iron fist policies, you will accelerate this exodus and cripple the war effort from within. It's a logical argument, and it's one the FSB's purity model completely rejects. From their perspective, the brain drain is not a bug. It is a feature. It is a natural, self-correcting purge. Those who leave, they argue, are the ones who lack true loyalty. They are the potential fifth column, the carriers of Western ideological contagion. Their departure does not weaken Russia, it purifies it. Putin is therefore presented with a stark calculation. Kiriyenko offers a Russia that retains its talent at the cost of ideological permeability. The FSB offers a Russia of absolute ideological purity at the cost of its talent. By allowing the pressure to mount, Putin gets to see who stays and who leaves. He is testing the loyalty of his elite, not with words, but with unbearable pressure. The result is a slow, methodical separation of the wheat from the chaff. He is trading innovation for obedience, a strategic choice that signals a long-term commitment to a lower-tech, higher resilience model of statehood. This is an intentional cultivation of a specific type of human capital, one that values survival and loyalty above all else. For months, it appeared Putin was simply observing these competing models, gathering data from their brutal clashes. But in the appointment of Andrei Belousov as defense minister, we see the first sign of a synthesis. The crucible is beginning to produce its first result. Belousov is not a general. He is not a spy. He is an economist. A state planner, his appointment baffled the West, but within the logic of the crucible, it is perfectly clear. He is neither a Kiriyenko technocrat nor an FSB hardliner. He is the fusion of both. Belousov embodies the efficiency model's obsession with systems, logistics, and economic output. His mandate is not to lead troops on the battlefield, but to conduct a full-scale audit of the Ministry of Defense and re-engineer the entire Russian economy onto a permanent war footing. He is there to ensure that every ruble, every factory, every resource is mobilized for a single purpose: victory, at any cost. Yet, he also serves the purity model's objective. By launching a massive anti-corruption campaign within the military, he is not just fighting graft, he is purging the old guard, breaking up established networks of loyalty, and replacing them with men loyal only to the state and its supreme objective. He combines the technocrat's mind with the hardliner's mission. He is the prototype of the new Russian manager, a war economist, a logistician of attrition, whose sole purpose is to feed the machine. He is the first man of the new system Putin is building. So, what is the final product? What is the ultimate goal of this brutal forging process? It is the creation of a permanent war state, a Russia re-engineered from the ground up for a generational struggle. This state will look very different from the one that began the invasion in 2022. Economically, it will be a command and control system, less innovative but more resilient to sanctions. Its primary output will be munitions, not consumer goods. Technologically, it will be isolated behind a sovereign internet, sacrificing global connection for absolute information control. Socially, it will be militarized and ideologically rigid, with loyalty enforced and dissent extinguished. This new state is being designed specifically to counter America's strategic advantages. The US relies on high-tech, precision warfare, economic dominance, and a global alliance network. The permanent war state of Russia is designed to negate these. It cannot compete on technology, so it will compete on mass and attrition. It cannot compete on economic dynamism, so it will compete on societal endurance and the capacity to suffer. It will turn the conflict into a test of industrial capacity and political will, a grinding war of production where battlefield victories are measured in meters and years. This is a strategy born from a clear-eyed assessment of Russian weakness. Rather than trying to match the West's strengths, Putin is creating a system that thrives in a domain where the West is most vulnerable: long-term, grinding, attritional conflict. This brings us to the most dangerous conclusion. The West is watching for cracks, hoping for a collapse that would end the war and neutralize the Russian threat. We are waiting for the system to fail, but the true danger is not that Putin's crucible will fail. The true danger is that it will succeed. A chaotic, fractured Russia with loose nuclear weapons is a terrifying scenario. But a stable, unified, and successfully militarized Russia, ideologically committed to a permanent conflict and economically engineered to sustain it, is a far more profound and enduring strategic challenge. It's a rival that no longer plays by the rules of global finance or technology, but by the grim arithmetic of attrition, a state where the people have been conditioned to accept endless war as the new normal. The power struggles we see are not the death throes of a failing regime. They are the birth pangs of a new one, a regime being forged in the fires of internal conflict, deliberately made harder, more brutal, and more resilient. We are looking for signs of weakness, while the architect of the system is busy hammering it into a weapon. The forge is hot, and the hammering has only just begun. The forge is hot, and the hammering has only just begun. But what is the final weapon being hammered on the anvil? And what are the hidden fractures that even the most intense fire cannot mend? To understand the future, we must move beyond the process of creation and examine the blueprint of the finished product. This permanent war state operates on a fundamentally new social contract. For 2 decades, the Putin bargain was simple: prosperity and stability in exchange for political apathy. Citizens could enrich themselves, travel, and consume as long as they stayed out of politics. The war has shattered this contract. The new bargain is far more primal: survival and a sense of national greatness in exchange for total mobilization. Under this new contract, declining living standards are no longer a sign of government failure. They are reframed as a patriotic sacrifice. Food shortages are not an economic crisis. They are a necessary discipline. The state no longer promises its people a better life, only a meaningful struggle against an existential enemy. This is a society trading bread for banners, and it is a powerful, if grim, source of cohesion. In practice, this transformation is the Belousov doctrine. His mission is to strip the Russian military-industrial complex down to its bare metal studs and rebuild it on the principles of a Soviet-era planned economy. This isn't just about fighting corruption. It is about eradicating the very concept of profit from the war machine. Private contractors, middlemen, and oligarchs who grew rich on inflated defense contracts are no longer assets. They are inefficiencies to be eliminated. Under Belousov, the production of artillery shells, drones, and armored vehicles will be treated not as a business, but as a public utility, as essential and state-controlled as water or electricity. From a logistical standpoint, this creates a system that is slow and uninnovative, but incredibly robust. It is designed to win a war of industrial output. While the West debates sending a few dozen advanced fighters, the Belousov doctrine aims to churn out thousands of simple, good-enough tanks and 1 million artillery shells a month. The goal is to bury Ukraine and its Western backers under an avalanche of steel. This is the industrial logic of attrition, and Belousov is its chief architect. Yet, this is where we find the first, deep-seated paradox of the crucible. The fire can forge loyalty, but it cannot forge genius. In fact, it often burns it away. The purity model's insistence on ideological conformity over competence creates a fatal weakness that runs through the entire system. When you purge the disloyal, you inevitably purge the brilliant, the independent-minded, and the innovative. You are left with a leadership class, both military and civilian, that is impeccably loyal, but potentially mediocre.